All right, folks, we're in the third week now. It's time to wrap up the discussions on Shoah, and I want to go through some of the issues you'll be dealing with the discussions, but also you need to get started on the Shoah essay by making sure you decide on what topic you want to do and just start going on that and get the quotations you're going to work with. So let me go through that for a bit and get you started on it. The first thing is, let me go to the calendar and kind of show you where we are and what we'll be doing over the next few days, okay? So we can wrap up. Let me shrink myself down a little bit. That's a little bit better. Put myself up here. Let's go to the calendar first and show you where we are. And we're right now on July 1st. You should have finished up the Chelmno testimony. That was due last week on, I think, Thursday. And you should have finished up watching the Treblinka. And a number of you jumped ahead and watched the Warsaw Ghetto, and that's great. Good. And if you've already finished the Warsaw Ghetto testimony, good. But make sure today, by the end of today, you get done with the Chelmno testimony, because a number of folks haven't finished it yet. Make sure you get that done. Get the description of it done and get it posted. And also make sure you get Treblinka done today. You don't want to fall behind on this because we've got the essay coming up by the end of the week. So get that done and make sure you watch the Warsaw Ghetto and get that described. And one of the big things I'm going to be talking about here is, and let me go back to the course. Let me go there and get us going into the Shoah one. So you should know where you are. Let me point out one thing. The essay is going to be due on Friday. I moved it from Wednesday back to Friday because I don't know why I put it on Wednesday in the first place. And you guys needed to finish up your discussions before we do the essay, and that was too soon anyway. So I've moved it to Friday. That's where it's going to go, and that's going to be the halfway in the course. And you're going to finish the second of four essays. So that's the way it is. Okay. Now the other thing here, let me go back to the course and take you to the Shoah unit. And here we go. Here's the Shoah. And I prefer, you can go through the modules. I realize that, but I prefer you go through the pages because I have it better organized that way. And you're going to have lesson 2. You're watching it right now. But let me move myself up there. And make sure you get the discussion with the Chelmno. Make sure you get Treblinka done today. If you can get the Treblinka done today, you're on course, okay? And one of the things I want you to be aware of, and I'm going to talk about this with some of the video today, watch out for silence. When the way things are covered up, or the way people, and it's everybody, both the Germans, or all three, the Germans, the Jews, and the Poles, all don't really want to talk about certain things. Or they do want to talk about other things. And watch the way, not only what they say reveals about what they were doing, but also when they cover things up. What does that say about them? And don't necessarily, and I warned people about this before in the last video, avoid stereotyping, okay? We just don't have any time for that. And that means either, don't stereotype the Jews, the Poles, or the Germans in any manner. Try to take them all as individuals in very complicated situations. Now, what I don't want you to do is just dismiss what's going on or act like it doesn't really matter or that the truth is somewhere in between. That is one of the stupidest things anybody can ever say. The truth can never fully be uncovered, but we can get a pretty darn good idea by both what they say and also by what they cover up. And it's very important to understand that thing I told you earlier about throughout Europe, there was a problem with anti-Semitism. It's still around today. It definitely is. And Germans and Poles shared that anti-Semitism. The Germans had access. Not all Germans shared that anti-Semitism, but many did. And many Poles did. But Germans had access at that time to military power and used it. So know that that was going on, but we're also going to get into the very complicated situations that people were in and why they did certain things. So avoid resorting to stereotypes, okay? Anybody can fall prey to bigotry and racism and things like that, but you want to protect yourself. You want to know the elements of it so you don't fall prey to it. But you also don't want to give anybody a pass just because they're an anti-Semite. You want to hold people accountable for what they're doing, but avoid the stereotypes. Call things as they are. I want you to always be aware of that. And we're going to go through some of the troubling elements of all the testimony. And just be aware that the world is very complicated. And you're not going to get clear, easy, good guy, bad guy scenarios, even out of the Holocaust. But let's go through that, okay? There's plenty of evil and plenty of good people that were going around and heroes and such. But for most people, the world's a little more complicated. So get Chelmno done. You're going to see that. I'm going to go through some of the silence in there. Get Treblinka done. You're going to get Treblinka is going to be primarily Franz Sukhomel and Abraham Bamba. And then Warsaw Ghetto. Warsaw Ghetto is, for a lot of folks, a little more difficult because it's understanding that the ghetto wasn't an extermination area in a direct sense. It was a holding area. They cordoned off the ghetto, held people in there until they could ship them out. But if they could starve you to death while you're there, that's kind of what's going to happen. So Warsaw Ghetto is a little more complicated. And one thing I do want to mention, I don't want people going off and doing research on the Holocaust. You don't need to. If you want to, great, go ahead. But for this unit, you don't need to do it. Now, your essay is not going to be a research essay, okay? What your essay is going to be is a close, careful examination of a primary source. You are going to be creating a secondary source by closely and carefully examining that primary source, which is going to be the testimony on Chelmno or on Treblinka or on the Warsaw Ghetto. You get to choose which one you want to do, okay? So I hope that's clear with it. You don't have to go out and start looking at books or anything. I want you to focus on their testimony. All I'll explain to you is that the thing I told you before is that the Holocaust went in stages. And in the early stages, I do want you to understand that throughout Europe, there was a problem with anti-Semitism. There still is. Throughout Europe, this was a problem. I'm talking about throughout France, throughout Germany, throughout Austria, Czechoslovakia, which was, one whole country back then, the Hungarian Empire, and all these different countries, in Poland too. All of them had a serious problem with anti-Semitism throughout. So understand that was a problem throughout Europe, which is one of the reasons why you shouldn't just say it was the Germans. It was a European issue. So I want you to understand that. I also want you to understand that the Holocaust took place in stages. And it was undertaken primarily by the German military. They had access to the military means at the time. Other countries didn't. They had the most advanced military in Europe at the time. But it took place in Poland. The Germans were the ones driving it at the time, the German military. It was taking place primarily in Poland, and they could do that because they shared a lot of the same anti-Semitism with the rest of Europe. So understand that's what was going on, but also understand it developed in stages. Chelmno is one of the early stages where they were literally driving the vans around town and gassing the people with exhaust from the tailpipe. That's what they were doing. They would stow them in the van, lead the tailpipe into the top of the van, and drive it around town until they were dead. It was that, ruthless and barbaric. And then they would bury the bodies. Then they learned that they had to burn the bodies or else they didn't have enough room. And then they started to learn that we've got to get a more efficient way. And so they developed places like Treblinka in the middle stages where they started using gas. And you're going to see that Treblinka was a very efficient operation. It was a killing factory. By the time you get to Auschwitz, which is later on, it is basically an extremely large and advanced version of Treblinka. So there are stages. We are not going to go into Auschwitz. Most of you have probably heard about it, might know a little bit about it, but I'm just skipping it only because I want to give you a broader perspective, and I want us to focus not so much on historical research, but on the testimonies from these lesser-known areas and these lesser-known aspects of it, like the ghettos and Chelmno and things like that, okay? So that's the goal. I want to be very clear on that. And again, don't stereotype. It's kind of stupid. But I don't think I need to go into that too much. I hope at least. If I need to, then oh well. So now you've got the show of videos down here. To reiterate on this, the first part is about 4 hours long, and you just need to watch the first 35 minutes. That's primarily Simon Srebnick and Michael Plotchlovnik. I'll go to them in a bit. And then the second part is primarily at first, you're going to watch the first segment, which is the first 45 minutes. And the whole second part is another 4 hours. This movie is almost 9 hours long. You don't have to watch the whole thing. I'm kind of nice with that, okay? So watch the first 45 minutes. It's primarily Franz Sukhomel, one of the guards from there. And I'm going to go through some of his testimony. And then Abraham Bamba also chimes in. He's one of the Jewish survivors. And at the end, you get the Warsaw Ghetto for the last, from 4:11 to the end. I forget how long it is. So you're watching segments of about 35 to 45 minutes. You should have gotten them done, if not today, then pretty darn soon. So let me go to, let me go first to part one. And let me show you a few things of what you should be looking for. Let me first get rid of my ugly mug. You go away. That is much better now. Let's go over to this. And let me go through this a little bit. He's talking to one of the Polish villagers. And watch what he says here. Now, I'll stop it every now and then. And they're speaking French, and it's getting translated to Polish. And he asks them, did they weep?
Kto nie był tutaj, to nie może zrozumieć, żeby to tak mogli mordować.
Quand la famille se rassemble, ils en parlent encore autour de la
I to
table.
oficjalnie, tak przy szosy, tak publicznie, wszyscy
Parce que c'était
wiedzieli.
public à côté de la route, tout le monde le savait.
No, ja powiedziałem, że oni sobie to żarty prowadzą, naprawdę.
Ah, il a dit que c'était vraiment l'ironie des Allemands,
Że tutaj morderstwo, a on musi śpiewać.
qu'on tuait les gens et lui, il est obligé de chanter.
Tak ja sobie myślałem w duchu.
C'est ce que je pensais.
Now, what the villager there was talking about is that number one, now let me come back in here. Number one, he was pointing out very clearly, they knew what was going on. Anybody who denies they knew, you get over and over again from the Polish villagers ultimately admitting, sometimes under a little bit of pressure from Landsman, they knew what was going on. Everybody knew. And so they knew. But then he points out, remember he was talking about Simon Srebnick being asked to sing, and Landsman takes Srebnick back, and Srebnick still remembers those songs. And what he's trying to do is get people to go back there in their minds and in their hearts, and you get a sense of what they felt and what they experienced at the time. He's giving you a real sense of these people as a primary source. That's why this is such an important movie, and why it was such a big deal when it came out in the early 80s. These people were starting to die off. So, and it came out in the early 80s when they were still in their 40s, 50s, 60s, still, cognizant of everything that had happened to them. So that's something I want you to know about. But also he mentions that German irony. And this was at Chelmno. And it's making him sing songs about the girls and the soldiers while his people are being murdered in thousands. That's what he's talking about. It's one of the Polish villagers talking about what they knew the Germans were doing and how they were undertaking it. So keep that in mind with it. Let me disappear again. This is Michael Plotchlebnik. Let's watch him for a moment here. And he asks him what died in Chelmno. And this is a friend with her hand on his shoulder. I think it might be his daughter. And notice, you're going to see he smiles a lot. I believe he's speaking in Czechoslovakian or Polish. I don't know. But he's talking about what's going on. I want you to pick up on the fact that his eyes are bright and he's smiling, and he's a Jewish survivor. There were only 2 survivors at Chelmno. Only 2, and he was one of them. Why is he doing that?
Tout est mort, mais on n'est qu'un homme, et on veut vivre, alors il faut...
Everything died, but he must live, so he wants to forget. I'm going to tell you right now, and this might sound really harsh. It's going to sound very harsh. I think he's lying. And I want to tell you that because I want to be very clear, because I think he's creating a silence here over what's going on. I don't think he's a liar, but I think he's lying. I think he's a very honest, sincere man whom I have an enormous amount of respect for. But I don't think that's why he's smiling. He's going to get asked about the smiling and about everything else. Watch what he does here, and I want you to keep this in mind and be careful with it.
Oublié. In Bamoarch.
Was ist gestorben? Ich danke Gott, ich vergesse, was gewesen. Sie kennt Menschen sind.
Notice the smile. He's one of the 2 Jewish survivors.
Il remercie Dieu de ce qui est resté et qu'il oublie. Et
He says he can forget, but once again, I'm saying I don't think he's telling the truth. Okay? I think he does remember.
on ne parle pas de ça.
That's the silence I want you to be aware of.
Est-ce qu'il trouve que c'est bien d'en parler?
En je meint dat ze geht, reden de fin.
Ist ja nicht geht. Für mich ist es nicht geht.
C'est pas bien. Pour moi, c'est pas bien, dit-il.
That should be your first hint as to
Parce
why
qu'il en
he's
parle
smiling.
quand même.
En favosriete de fin?
Ja, jetzt müssen Sie reden. Wenn wir so reden.
This is a very important question. Then why talk about it? It's not easy to talk about. Why not just tell Landsman to go pound sand? Why would this guy want to talk about it? Okay?
Hadden we een bier hebben ze gekregen van Eichmann auf een Prozess dort, wenn er ist mit down. Ich lese nicht, ich kann nicht lesen.
Il parle parce que maintenant, il est bien obligé de parler. Mais il a même reçu des livres sur le procès d'Eichmann où il était un témoin. Et il ne les lit même pas.
Can you guys tell? I hope you can tell from looking at him. Right now he's getting hit by things. Things are coming back to him. And notice that somebody grabbed his arm and kind of comforted him. He survived, but is he really alive? Notice somebody's comforting him. His silence about things, what he's covering up, is starting to come through.
Il a survécu en tant que vivant.
Ich hatte gelebt, du. Als lebendiger Mensch oder ein toter Mensch.
Ich bin dort gewesen, aber ich gerechnet, ich lebe noch, bin tot. Solange ich bin gewesen dort auf dem Platz. Maar ik ben gar niet dort gefahren, als we daar hebben, dan niet geglaubt, dan kan ik rauskommen von dat lebendig. Met alle togen zoekte video,
Quand il était sur place, il a vécu ça comme un mort, parce qu'il n'a jamais pensé qu'il survivrait. Mais il est vivant.
Pourquoi est-ce qu'il sourit tout le temps?
Why does he smile? He's asking him point blank. And I do want you to pick up on the fact that he's, again, smiling about this. Watch his answer.
Ça vous schmeichelt dir.
Nu was er tegen zo weinen, dus kan me even helfen, maar ik wein gewoon niet. Je moet schmeichelt, maar met weint man.
Qu'est-ce que vous voulez qu'il fasse? Qu'il pleure? Une fois on sourit, une fois on pleure.
I personally think that's all an act. In other words, he's covering up. And then we take you ahead a little bit. These are some of the other witnesses from another event. And I'm going to go through them, and I'm going to come back to Michael Plutchlovnik by running ahead a little bit, to a little bit later testimony. And you're going to see what I mean by covering up and creating a silence where they want to protect themselves. And that's why, and again, when I say that I think Plutchlovnik is lying, I don't mean he's lying to cover up what he's done is wrong, because I don't think he did anything wrong. I believe he's covering up because he doesn't want to feel what he feels about what happened. He doesn't want to re-experience it. Now, Landsman takes him back there and wants him to re-experience it.
Qu'est-ce qui s'est passé pour lui la première fois qu'il a déchargé les cadavres, quand on a ouvert les portes de son premier camion à gaz?
Notice the smile is gone. He can't put up the facade anymore. And notice what he's protecting is he does not want to go back to those emotions. Many people don't. And I will give a little bit of a note. If you know somebody's been through something traumatic, you should not be drilling them on it. You should let them be. They'll speak if they want to, but otherwise you should leave them alone. Landsman is doing this for the reasons that both Michael Plutchlovnik and he understand. They are trying to create a record of what happened in the Holocaust. And even if it's painful, they need to go through it, okay? So that's what he's trying to do. That's why he's putting Plutchlovnik through this.
Vous som Sie gefiel. Das erste Mal, wie man Essen die Tieren, wenn Sie haben gesehen, die Korbones.
Was hebben we gezegd, hé? Met geweint, met tranen, zuid.
Qu'est-ce qu'il pouvait faire? Il pleurait.
Nog een dritten toon. Afgelopen de vrouw, de kinderen.
Troisième jour, il a vu sa femme et ses enfants.
Ja, maar gaan ze gelijk. Nee, de vrouw is wel precies. Dat is gewoon. Dan zoekt we haast nog lift, we kunnen nog arbeiden. Een beetje.
Il a déposé sa femme dans la fosse et il a demandé à être tué. Les Allemands lui ont dit qu'il avait encore la force de travailler et qu'on ne le tuerait pas maintenant.
I want to stop it there and just point a couple things out there. I hope my point about Plotchlevnik's silence is clear here. He is not being silenced because he's trying to cover up any guilt that he has for having done something wrong. He's trying to avoid the pain of it. That's why he's created a silence about it. But I also want you to understand something that's very troubling about throughout the Holocaust. The Germans are using Jews to do the dirty work throughout. In a lot of the killing at the final stage, and a lot of the processing, a lot of the destroying of the bodies and everything else. The Germans usually do not get their own hands dirty. They also don't have the Poles doing it. They have the Jews doing it. The Jews are a key part of the process of the Holocaust, and Michael Plotchlevnik was there doing it. And you're going to carry with you shocking amounts of guilt over that, and that clearly is what Plotchlevnik's doing. So I want you to understand the complicated situation. He had no other choice to do anything else. If he said no, he would have ended up like everybody else, dead on the spot. Plenty of people said no. And he seems to have not made a conscious decision, but have just gone on. And when you get people who are emotionally exhausted, physically exhausted, they tend to just do that. That's what Plotchlevnik is demonstrating. Okay? Same thing with Simon Srebnick too. Let me jump up a little bit more because I want to make sure everybody understands. That's what was going down in Chelmno. This is Franz Sukomo. And I'll jump over this a little bit early. This is early on in the testimony. Now, some people might be bothered by the fact that this is secretive testimony. He didn't know he was being recorded. That's too bad. When you killed, hundreds of thousands of human beings, you don't really have a right to privacy anymore. So I don't feel sorry for Sukomo getting outed in this manner. But he starts off by singing that song. That's the Jewish irony in a very different location that Polish villager was talking about. The same thing that was going on with Srebnick in Chelmno was going on in Treblinka with Franz Sukomo. That attitude towards it, that distance, the dehumanizing of the Jews they're killing, and the exploiting of everyone around them, the exploiting the Poles and the other folks in order to undertake this. And they had to dehumanize, in other words, turn it into a joke. Now let me go on with Sukomo a little bit later on when he talks about things. Okay.
In Treblinka, im Spitzentage, 18.000 Leute.
18 ist zu hoch.
Ich habe das in Bericht gelesen.
Ja.
18.000 Leute zum Behandeln, zum Liquidieren.
Herr Landsmann.
All right, here I'm back again. Let's talk about, do you believe the Nazi? Now, most folks would say, he's a Nazi, I don't want to talk to him, I don't believe him. And what Landsmann's doing is bringing up an issue with a primary source. This is something a historian would want to look at. Seriously, how many people were killed every day in Treblinka? We've got to, can we put numbers on it? Even though it sounds sick and awful, how many thousands of people were killed every day? And he knows what Landsmann does, is he says, I went to the court records, it's 18,000 a day. And what Sukomo says is, no, that's number's too high. Whom do you believe? Now, at first you would want to go, I don't really believe Nazis. But keep in mind that Sukomo is being recorded secretly. Also keep in mind, in a number of places in his testimony, he's very proud of what they accomplished. He isn't so much bragging about, yes, I destroyed so many, people, I murdered so many Jews. It's not so much that he's outright doing that, but he's kind of proud of the efficiency that they achieved. Would he distort the number? Watch what he does here. So I want you to watch this with it.
Das ist zu hoch gegriffen. Glauben Sie mir das?
Wie viel?
12.000 bis 15.000. Aber da wurde auch die halbe Nacht dazu genommen. Nicht wahr? Die Transporte kamen oft schon um 6 Uhr früh.
Ja. Immer um 6 Uhr früh.
Nicht immer. Manches Mal.
Ja.
going to stop it there and pop back in. Not put myself in Sukomo's head, but anyway. Now, watch the way he talks about it, because it's very important. I've got to say this weird thing, but I believe the Nazi, as weird as it sounds, because notice the way he does things, the way he talks about it here. He talks about how hard they had to work to hit 12 to 15,000. It sure as heck sounds like if they could have hit 18, he would have done it. I don't think he's bringing the numbers down to make him look good, to make himself look good. I think he's admitting that, hey, we couldn't hit 18, but boy, don't you get a sense he would have done it if he could. I actually, in this case, and this is what historians do, when they're trying to establish certain facts, they will look at situations the way Landsman and Sukomo are doing. We have court records, which are official documents. But you know what? The people writing the court records are making their best estimates too. And Sukomo's actually there. He doesn't know he's being recorded, and he sounds like he would have wanted to kill more. I am going to go out on a limb. I'm going to say, I think he's probably true, probably accurate, more accurate. But notice, I don't have absolute certainty. That is what the historian has to do. You don't have absolute certainty, but you have to measure things, reason things through, watch what's going on, realize that people have ideologies and positions, and that's what's kind of going on at a deeper level here. But am I certain? No. But we have an estimate between 12 to 20,000. I'm going with Sukomo's number just because I think he would have gone 18 if he could. Okay? Let me jump up a little bit past it. Well, I'll hold it there, but you've got in here, you've got later on Bomba's testimony and others, and you see what goes on. I'll just go up to these. You've got situations later on where you can see that Sukomo and others, and let me actually open it up and I'll kind of give away what I'm talking about here. Let me blow this up. They talk about a lot of concealing what they were doing, both from the Polish villagers around them, but also from the Jews being murdered. And you get that with Bomba's testimony too. Remember that Bomba was a Jew cutting the hair of women about to be murdered in the gas chambers. And Bomba knows it. And what Bomba is doing is making the women calm down, because this is all part of a process of just getting your hair cut and getting a shower and moving on. It's actually not. We're going to murder you and dump your bodies and burn you. Bomba knows it. Most of the Jews coming into the gas chamber at that time know it too. But there's all a theater about this. Not everybody knows, but most of them know. Many of them know. But many of them ask Bomba what's going to happen, and he has to lie to them. So Bomba took part in this and had to be part of it. That's one of the things I told you about. A lot of the Jews were being used to be on the front line, on the very close interaction with the other Jews being murdered, to increase the efficiency. And they were being used as part of this theater to keep people calm, to keep the machinery working faster. If we have a bunch of screaming women and children, it's going to slow things down. But if we just tell them we're getting a shower, we'll get you a haircut, keep it moving, it gets things moving faster. And Bomba was part of that. That's a complicated situation to be in, an impossible one to do the right thing. If he doesn't cooperate, bang, he's dead, he's gone, we get the next person. Okay? So that's what was going on. It's a very complicated situation. And I want you to understand, if you look at Sukomo, he's a lot like your uncle or somebody that could be in your family. So I want you to understand that being part of something evil does make you complicit in the evil that went down. This is horrific, what went down with the Holocaust. And Sukomo was part of it. And people shouldn't be, going, oh, the truth is somewhere in between my rear end. Sukomo was part of one of the most evil acts in the history of the world and should be held accountable for it. But you should understand how easy it is to become part of this, and that if you have these kind of discriminatory views, you can be part of this just as easy as Sukomo has. So understand that when you go through it, but understand how Bomba is complicit in it because he was there. But understand also he didn't really have a choice. And watch the way the Germans, when they were putting together all of Treblinka, they were covering up the barbed wire with pine needles and things like that, so they didn't see it. They didn't see so the Poles could not look in, and that the Jews going in couldn't look out and they didn't have to look at the barbed wire. There's all this theater going on constantly. Everybody's acting around what they either suspect or know is going on, and that creates the silence. The emotional effect. Notice that Franz Sukomal does not struggle to talk about what went on. He doesn't have the emotional effects that Bomba and Płatchewnik do, clearly have, as they watch their own people being murdered. Sukomal never shows those signs. There's no breakdown in Sukomal. It didn't affect him. So it's always important to keep these in mind, this different kinds of silence that's taking place. I want you to be aware of it and take note of it. And you're going to see it coming up in the Warsaw Ghetto too. Okay? So that's where we are, guys. Finish up those discussions, get everything going. We're going to get started on the essays and everything else, okay? One little heads up I want to give you, and I'll be doing this with the next video. I'm going to be transferring the class off to another instructor whom I've actually personally selected, which is Leontine Jeffries. She is a magnificent instructor. She's going to be taking over the class. And I apologize for that, but she knows what she's doing with it. I've got some things I've got to take care of. If I had another choice, I would. But she's going to be taking over, but we're going to be doing a smooth transition. She'll be picking it up, and I'll go more into that in the next video. Take care, folks.